So welcome back to Bonded Voices. My name's Ian.
This is Lauren.
And this is Greg.
And tonight we're going to discuss the very sticky topic of friends who only talk about themselves. I'm sure all of us have friends, they may be family, they may be co-workers, that when you get into a conversation, past the hello, how are you, it just becomes a whole conversation about them, which is not a conversation.
No, it's more about you're there to be their sounding board. It sometimes feels like so.
It's almost a dissertation to some extent.
Yeah.
It's like sitting in a Psych 101 class in college where they're just orating.
So this is what I want us to discuss through this. And I think this can be very therapeutic to others is, why do people do it? How can you alert people who want to be self-aware to they're actually doing this? And how can we be helpful in having these great conversations like we do here on Bonded Voices, where we talk about our own experiences, but no one dominates the conversation? So let's start with, why do we think people only talk about themselves?
One of the theories I bat around is I think the people that are typically doing this, at least the ones that in the situation that I see, is that they really don't have anything to connect with you with. If they're in a conversation and they just want to join in the conversation, so they just start talking about themselves because they have nothing, they don't really fit into the conversation. So they're trying to push themselves into it.
Well, I could definitely see that. And I've learned over the years that when you walk away from a conversation and you think, man, that was a great conversation. I really had a great conversation with Ian. What's interesting is if you spent most of the time talking, you think it was a great conversation. So if Ian is really good at asking me questions, you're learning a lot, but I'm talking more, then I'm going to be like, that Ian guy is great. I love him. It's a wonderful connection. So taking that one step further, that's almost fueling the same concept of they might feel whatever it might be, uncomfortable in the situation, entering the discussion, and the more that they talk, the more that they think it was a great conversation.
Right, so it feeds the beast.
Feeds the beast.
And look, we've all heard the saying, you're born with one mouth and two ears, so listen twice as much as you should talk. And, I think there's a lot of credence to that. I remember the first time I heard that, it was sort of like someone slapping you in the face, and you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, a lot of jobs will always say to you, be a good listener. Mm-hmm. Don't dominate the conversation. Be collaborative. And I think the whole goal of a good conversation, and again, I think there's a difference between co-workers, acquaintances, and friends. If you're really, truly friends, you should care about, so how was your weekend too?
Sure.
Not just, here's what I did. I went skiing, and I did this, and I did that. And I think people come away from those conversations just wondering, are we really that close of friends? They never asked me anything. And by asking, how are you, that shows a sense of caring.
So I guess the takeaway is to learn how to read the audience, see if you're...
Definitely. I think they're fundamentals more. Right. So, yeah.
So you see what they're... And if you feel like you're then dominating the conversation, pause and then ask them a question. Because I think I've gone through this whole process where I'll be really excited about something and I'll be meeting with someone talking and they're just nodding and I'm like, yeah, I need to shut up now and listen a little bit.
Right?
Well, that's paying attention to the social cues.
Right. Maybe that's one of the reasons people keep talking. They're not aware of the social cue.
Sure. Could be possible.
Now think about women will always say men try and fix things, and we do. We love to come with a solution. And sometimes people just want to vent.
Sure.
Now that's different. I think if none of us, or if anyone who's listening doesn't have the social sense to know when you just got to let someone talk, that's great. And I don't want this to come across as it should always be, you had 3 minutes, and you had 3 minutes.
Right.
But because there's going to be times when someone just needs to get something off their chest. But if we're going out, even as couples for dinner, or just around drinking and having fun, I think it'd be very awkward if just one person talked the whole time about them.
Right.
About their kids, about their life, about their new car, about their house, about their job. And I think everyone would be waiting for like,
oh, it's about time to go.
Well, right, yeah, other than that, you'd be hoping that you're good enough friends that they're going to be like, and what about you, Lauren? How was your weekend?
Right.
Or, how's your job going?
Your comment on the sometimes you just need to listen. That was a tough lesson for me to learn early on in my married life. And now I just ask the question, do you want to talk or do you want me to try and fix it?
Right.
And thankfully, we're at the level where she'll say, yeah, I just need to talk. Okay, great. I'm here to support you. But I 100% agree with you that that's a different situation. And even when you get out in a group setting, the idea of some one person dominating, and what's the difference? Is there a correlation? I'm going to throw a curveball in here. Is there the one-upper? How does the one-upper play into this?
That's brilliant, because I think there is part of what plays into this is that one-upper. And they're the people who, their boat's always got to be bigger. Their car, it's faster,
Sure.
And it takes away from that camaraderie and that friendship, because it just becomes about them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and look, I've had the experiences, I've lived in several countries of the world, and it's not just an American thing. I've seen it in many different countries. And I think it's, if you ask people, I think in every one of and I double checked, there's 197 countries of the world, right? Right? We were at 195, 196, we were good, we were close. But I think you could ask them in those 197 countries of the world, and they'll be like, yep, it happens here at the Vatican too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a little bit of human nature in there, just from a competition. There's also keeping up with the Joneses. I think there's a lot of factors in there, but back to our topic for this particular discussion, the one-uppers, what I feel is that the one-uppers sometimes don't even listen. Rather than being so excited to talk about what they want to talk about, they do a tiny bit of listening, and if you talk about a baseball bat, they're quick to, they just heard baseball bat. They didn't hear what type, what kid it was for, any of that. Then they're off on, I just bought the ABC 123.
Right.
And it's the best, and it's not even in production yet, but I already bought it.
They have their conversation already queued up in their head. They're just waiting for the keyword.
Right. Right.
And again, it comes back to talking about them. They don't follow up with, so hey, where'd you get it from? Like, what is it for Aaron? Is it for Bob? Who's the bat for? They just, again, talk about themselves. So it's one of those, I think it's a failing in people, because you don't grow a relationship with other friends unless you ask questions about them and their well-being.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question to you guys. So if you're experiencing this one-upper or the dominating conversationalist, do you pause the conversation? Hey, maybe let me talk a little bit, or do you just let them go on about it and then just hold a grudge?
Can you imagine sitting around a dinner table and go, do you mind if I talk about me for a second? Like, what the reaction would be? Like, I think the people who talk about themselves would be just like,
they would be floored.
They'd be floored.
My gosh.
Maybe they don't. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't realize they're doing it. Maybe they're just so used to Maybe they're at a profession where they're just talking all the time.
That's a good point.
And they're just used to it. They're just like, okay, I've got to be the orator for the family. I come home, I do this, I give my speech, and then now it's on to my next.
It's a very blue pill thing to say, though, right? Could they just be red pill selfish?
Well, there's certain professions and certain personalities within certain professions that are very dominant. They need to control the situation at all times. And that would be very difficult. I think I hadn't even thought about that till you brought it up, Lauren, that to come home and turn that off and then become more middle of the road, conversive, listening,
right,
offering information, dialogue. That's an interesting.
So, and this is the reason why I specifically went with friends who talk about themselves, because I think in a work situation, we've all experienced that person who wants to be the subject matter expert, who wants to be the smartest person in the room, guys and girls. And they just want to hear themselves talk, because if they talk for long enough, how can they be wrong? Because no one else
no one corrected them.
No one's offered anything else.
Sure.
Right, so that's why I went specifically with friends, because I can leave a meeting where I feel I never said 2 words, and I don't care. But I think if I went out with people who I thought were friends, and let's say you have a third party listening in, and you went, they're good friends, and that person said to you, they never asked you anything about you. How are they good friends? So that's where I'm going with this, which is, okay, why do they do it? And I don't know. And I don't know if it is just an individual trait in people. Is it something more?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think how you could alert someone that they're doing that.
Right? Is it something like Lauren, you were saying? You stop and you say, maybe it's time for me to tell you how my weekend went.
Right.
And that almost feels like a schoolyard conversation amongst a couple of second graders.
Right.
Or a teacher teaching 2 kids how to have a conversation. Okay, now Johnny, you talk. Okay, now Bobby, you talk. But I think that there's probably some merit to that concept to at least bring some relevance or some sanity. Not that they're not sane, but some clarity into the talker, controller, dominator.
Maybe they don't even realize they're doing it, is what I would.
Sure.
Hopefully, the people aren't that narcissistic that. I mean, there are going to be people that are that narcissistic, but hopefully that you've picked your friends well enough to where maybe it's just a bad day for them and they're super excited, or maybe you just need to, hey, I'm really excited that you did this, but I did this as well. What do you think?
Like, could you ever imagine that moment where you actually said, you know what, if we're still going to be friends, unless you ask me something about me, maybe we're not that good of friends?
Doesn't have to be that confrontational, though.
Okay, so then what's the middle ground?
So you say, hey,
the next time we go out, I'd love to share some of my latest triumphs. The next time we hang out,
remember me next time we're together, I got this great story to tell you.
Right. I had a great weekend too, but obviously there's not time in this discussion to share that. So,
yeah, I see. I don't know. Yeah, it's such a tough one, but I think we've all experienced it with people who we'd love to not have to have that conversation with.
Maybe you just send this podcast to that person.
Yeah. That could be it too. So, okay, you could address it head on, and that would be interesting to hear how.
Well, if you're truly friends, it shouldn't matter, right?
It shouldn't matter.
And if you're not getting any words in edgewise, well then, no loss.
So actually, I would even say my buddy who I was just telling you about, he talks a lot. And I mean, he can go off on a tangent, but he's the sort of guy you can say to him, hey, you finished talking about you? And he'd laugh about it I mean, he'd apologize and let you go off about you. But he wouldn't take, because he knows he's like happy and positive and passionate about things. And
well, so right there, if people are passionate about stuff, how can you fault them for talking about it? If they're passionate, maybe they're trying a new hobby and they're trying to get you to talk about it. And like, I went skydiving for the first time, which I'll never do. But let's just say that's
you should.
Yeah. not going to happen. But, so we're sitting there, and I'm talking about it nonstop, and you're like, well, kind of sounds like fun now. Maybe he's just trying to sell you on trying something new.
Like, so, okay, let's think about it. Is it lack of self-awareness, selfishness, narcissism, whatever it is that's not good, if people have got that trait within a friendship? I think, and friendship I even goes towards with your kids, with your wife, your spouse. That's a friendship conversation. If it's just all about you and your day, yes, some people just need to vent, but if there's not that back and forth, I think you're going to run into a lot of problems with that. Obviously, solution-wise, it's like, how do we stop people doing that? And, what creative ways could you have of turning the conversation so it's not just about them?
It reminds me of an old project management strategy for agile development. You would, this was a long, old school way of doing it. Everyone would go around the room talking about what the project they were working on. You could only talk if you're holding the notebook, right? So maybe you set that up in a conversation. That'd be a great idea for a friendship thing. Yeah, if you're constantly having one friend that always talks about, I'm holding the phone right now, or I'm holding the rock.
Friendship ball or something.
Right, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. And what we did with the project management was we made sure it was really heavy and you had to stand up. So you didn't want to talk forever. Made you more brief and get to the point, but maybe that's something like that.
I think it's a great idea. That's it reminds me of some of the recommendations when the kids were really young. If you're at a party and kids are in the pool, then there's some type of device that I'm holding onto it, so I'm the lifeguard, I'm the eyes watching this.
Yeah.
I need to go in, hey, Lauren, you're holding this now, you're responsible for that. So it's the same concept of, I have the power, I'm now yielding the power.
Yeah. See, I'm loving where this is going, because there's almost like a gamification idea that you could apply to building better friendships with better conversations, because you're giving everyone the opportunity to play. Mm-hmm. Because in a lot of ways, I think in a group setting, you only feel important if people listen to you at all. You're only relevant,
right,
if people listen.
You feel like you have to add something to the conversation. Well, there could be people that don't talk because you don't have anything relevant, and then you don't want to call them out. Well, hey, Greg, here's the rock, or here's the golden spoon. You need to talk. Well, I don't have anything today. Okay.
See, and I came back tonight from our men's group, and one of the things we purposefully do around our table, and we've got a big table, 14 of us, is making sure, especially new people, have a voice at the table. Because some of us can tend to just talk. And the goal is to make sure everyone's included in the couple of hours that we have together. Maybe the same can be applied to group of friends getting together.
Well, and maybe that person does have something to say. They're just not, they don't think it's a big deal. Or they don't want to share that for some reason. And so that might... And that might yield a follow-up discussion after you... Let's say you hang out, there's 4 people, and you've passed this device back and forth, and I'm the one that says, I don't have anything to share. Then a good friend would be like, hey, dude, is everything all right? Maybe in a one-to-one.
Yes.
Right.
Just following
outside of a group
hey,
thing,
is everything cool? Because that person might have something that they want to share. Although the flip side might occur that if you use this practice all the time, there might be some people that just don't show up because they know that they're going to be handed the talking rock or whatever it might be.
Well, see, I even think the person who loves talking about themselves, I was even thinking you were going to go there, that they wouldn't show up because they don't have enough time to talk about themselves.
I'm tired of being regulated.
Yeah, I have more to say, So
I'm
takeaways.
More important.
Yeah, right. And it is a sense that. So, okay, takeaways for this. I think there's an agreement, and I think it's obvious that it's not healthy to just go into a conversation and talk about yourself. So Lauren, give us something as a takeaway.
Well, I would say try to be understanding of the people that are doing it, but give them some type of visual clue that, hey, cut it off. You know?
You mean if it's like a spouse or other friend that does it all the time?
Yeah.
I would hope it's not a spouse. But it's possible.
But it's possible. You know,
Sure.
I think I would love to be in a situation where you had someone who did that you found a way to make them closer friends and conscious of that people felt you talked too much about yourself.
Well, that brings up a valid point that some of those people, that someone that exhibits those traits might have been doing so for a lifetime unknowingly.
Subconsciously, yeah.
Subconsciously. Right. And that, we're not here to change that person, but to help, I think,
just make people aware. I think it is, right? I think if we can help through this podcast make people aware that this is happening, and maybe in your own circles, just find ways to seek out that person rather than just dismiss them or avoid them. Find ways to get them to engage with you. And again, I like the gamification. I could even imagine that, like those cards of humanity, or where you have cards where it's like you have the, hey Greg, how was your weekend? I know it sounds false, right?
Maybe they don't have it, like they're really bad at conversation too, right? So maybe, again, the games, the cards.
Kicks them off.
Here's a way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
So we've all been to those events where there's icebreakers. And so that's the same concept, is to get everybody to contribute, but not let any one person dominate. So back to your idea of different cards, that's an interesting concept. So almost like a Trivial Pursuit of
a conversational pursuit.
Conversational cards.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, maybe we've got a new idea. We have to get to patenting that one. Well, thanks for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope it sparked thoughts in your own heads and amongst your own friends. So until next time, signing off.
This is Lauren.
This is Greg.
We'll see you again.